Welcome back to the Criminal Defense Advocate channel. I'm attorney coach James Bifelsky. And today I want to talk about going from the technical to the transformational in your practice and what it means to really embody the principles that we fight for. Principles like equality, justice, freedom, and truth. And when we as criminal defense attorneys take the time to go beyond just the humdrum daily work of our daily practices to embodying the very principles that we are working for, then our work will take on a brand new meaning. So let's talk about this because I think it is so important in our society in the United States and probably abroad in other democracies where the rule of law has been around a long time. It's easy to get burnt out by dealing with the same kinds of cases day in and day out. And yet one of the things that I found, it's sort of a mental hack, but it goes way beyond that because it's something that goes deep into your heart and your soul by learning to embody the principles of justice, equality, freedom, truth, and other principles that have been around for ages. Things that we talk about in reference to something like the United States Constitution, the Declaration of Independence, those inalienable rights that our founding fathers fought so hard to protect. They embodied it because they had to go so deep with their belief that fighting for something like liberty and justice for all people in the colonies of America before the official founding of our country were important enough to give their lives for, that they in fact risked everything to fight for true liberty, for true equality, for religious liberty, and for justice for all people. And when you think about people like Thomas Jefferson, John Adams, George Washington, Alexander Hamilton, James Madison, John Monroe, Benjamin Franklin, some of the early founders who, of course, they had faults. And we read about all sorts of issues in terms of some of them having slaves. But when you think about the bigger picture and the purpose that they had when they staked their claim on freedom, on liberty, on justice, on equality for all of the colonists in America, despite what the British Crown was dictating from overseas, that was unjust, unequal, unfair, inappropriate. To do what the founding fathers did, to stake their claim on these deeper principles of humanity that have guided all civilized societies throughout time and have come to save crumbling, decaying societies from death and ruin. These principles of justice and equality and human dignity were the very principles that the founding fathers staked their claim on and risked their lives for. And now we see how powerful their purpose was in their daily work, being guided by that deeper purpose and those deeper principles of equality, justice, liberty. And if you think just for a moment about the impact that their lives had on not only the people around them at the time, but for the rest of the citizens of what became the United States of America, that without the inspiration and the power of persuasion and the leverage of the depth of the principles that they embodied themselves in terms of justice, equality, human dignity, freedom, that transformed generations to come, because it is a powerful principle that goes beyond just what is popular at any given time in society. These deeper principles are deeper truths that exist on their own in a certain sense, but only exist when they're actually embodied. They only exist in human reality, in time and space, when they're actually embodied by human actors who bring up these deeper principles from within their souls and bring them out into the world. And some people, like John Adams, did it in the court system as an attorney, founding father, defending the British soldiers who were involved in the Boston Massacre, even though the British soldiers were part of ultimately what became the enemy in the Revolutionary War. And yet John Adams understood this deep, deep principle, which is when you fight for something that is as true and lasting and deep and profound as justice and equality and liberty, it doesn't matter who you're fighting for. If you're fighting for the deeper principle and you embody that in your work as a defense attorney, then you, like John Adams, can defend the arch enemy, the soldiers who are doing the bidding of the English crown. Like we can defend who sometimes seems to be the arch enemy, people who are doing unpopular things based on what is popular in society at any given time. And what is vital for us as criminal defense attorneys, if we really truly stand for justice and equality for all people, is that we take on the representation of unpopular causes, unpopular people. Because again, if we are embodying the power of lasting justice, equality, liberty for all, then it doesn't matter who we're representing. And of course, we all have to take the time to uphold our own professional and ethical standards. But when we're talking about high-level discussions and bringing in these principles into our lives that can transform our practice from that of just a technician, somebody who learned the law, procedure, how to do this thing called legal practice, go from the technician to the transformational leader as defense attorneys, then we can do great things. And we will also develop a soul sense of purpose in our work, because we will be connected to this depth of purpose, this lasting principle, justice, equality, liberty, and others. When we connect to these deeper, universal human principles, and we bring that connection into our daily practice, then we can become unstoppable. I've seen it in my own practice time and time again. I want to give you one example of somebody who did this, who, as a lawyer, fought for equal rights for Black South Africans. Nelson Mandela. Back in the 50s and the 60s, he was treated as a second-rate citizen because of the color of his skin. And the minority white leaders in South Africa were engaging in discrimination and segregation. And that was apartheid. And at the time when he was fighting for equality for Black South Africans, he actually was charged and convicted for what I believe was sedition, treason. He ended up going to prison for 27 years simply for fighting for the truth of equality. And because society in South Africa at that time, in the 50s and 60s, was consumed in the power structure by inequality and segregation and injustice. His fight led him to suffer one of the ultimate sacrifices, which was the total loss of his freedom when he was sent to prison. 27 years. He paid almost the ultimate price, next to dying for your greater cause. And yet Nelson Mandela did not back down. He fought for equality for the Black South Africans. He fought hard day in and day out. And even though he was unjustly arrested, charged, and convicted and sentenced to 27 years in prison for simply fighting for equal rights, he embodied equality and true justice. He embodied a deeper sense of purpose and a passion for the cause of equality for his Black South African brothers and sisters. So much so that he was willing to give up everything. And he did. And yet, when you fast forward beyond his time in prison, when he was finally released, he was actually released early. He was given a life sentence. He was released after 27 years. Things started to change. And it was by that time, I think in the early 90s, that because of what he stood for and what he was willing to stake his claim on, the fight for true justice and equality for Black South Africans, he became the first democratic president of South Africa and served for 4 to 6 years. He received over 250 awards for his deep, deep work and service for equal rights for all people. And he also won a Nobel Peace Prize. And so when I talk about embodying the very purpose for which you work as a criminal defense attorney, think about somebody like Nelson Mandela, who was willing to fight to the end so that his friends, his family members, his relatives, his clients could be treated equally under the law, even though the law did not treat them equally. It took his fight and his own sacrifice to transform the legal landscape in South Africa to what it is now. And when you and I can do that in our day-to-day practices, it doesn't have to be on this high-level scale of being sent to prison or being assassinated like somebody like Martin Luther King Jr. But when we go deeper into our heart and our soul and connect with these very long-lasting, deep human principles that will never change, liberty, equality, justice, freedom for all, then we tap into a power that goes way beyond our own human capacity. It's a universal power. And I have experienced it in my life. If you've experienced it, please comment in this video or like this video, share this video, because I think the more that you and I, as criminal defense attorneys, can take the time to go beyond the technical, to stop just being the technician that goes to our job and transform our work into a profession where we tap into the deep principles, the undying principles, equality, liberty, justice, dignity of all human beings, then we will accomplish so much more, not only in a broader sense by transforming the criminal justice system to something that functions better than it does now, but for our clients who rely on us to be zealous advocates. The more we actually embody this pursuit of justice, true, deep, profound justice, the more we will actually save our clients from what is often an unjust criminal justice system. And so that's my challenge to you. I want to encourage you because I know that you have this within you, because we all do. It just starts with a simple decision. Do I want to connect with this deeper sense of purpose? Do I want to embody those very deep human principles which I represent as a criminal defense advocate. And if you say yes to those questions and you start to do this, and each day you think beyond just that one case you're working on, to how your work is actually affecting the entire criminal justice system and society. Because at the end of it all, if our society treats people unequally, unjustly, attacks and takes away the very thing which is the most precious gift of all, our liberty and our freedom, if we don't fight to protect that, then our society slowly crumbles. We are the vanguard. We are at the very front lines in terms of protecting what is most valuable to us as human beings, to our spouses, to our children's, most valuable to our parents, our family members, our friends, our colleagues. And I'm here just to encourage you and give you this golden nugget that I've been thinking a lot about lately, and that has been continuing to sort of gnaw away at me to share with you, because I think the more we do this and embody these deep human principles of justice, liberty, equality, freedom, and others, that we breathe new life into our practices, we breathe new life into the criminal justice system, and we do a much better job for our clients, which brings about more success for us, not to puff up our pride, but to bring about a more just and fulfilling society, that we can be a part of that transformation. That's my word for today. I hope that this makes sense, and I hope that if you like this, you give me a like, give me a thumbs up, share it with somebody, share it with even non-attorneys who might be fighting for this cause, for the people who might be fighting for their very lives in prison. They're trying to get exonerated because of unjust accusations or convictions. Let's remember somebody like Nelson Mandela, the amazing power which he tapped into. Very real, very historical. It's not just pie in the sky ideas. Nelson Mandela embodied the pursuit of justice and equality, and he laid down his life for it. And yet that is where there was huge transformation in South Africa. You and I can do the same thing. Let's start today. Go transform your criminal defense practice by embodying the very principles that you fight for every day. Let's keep fighting for freedom.